Welcome to Unleash the Awesome with Dave Gambrill. All of us have unique skills, talents, and abilities that aren't being used to their full potential. Our mission is to share the people, tools, apps, and other resources that will help you unleash your awesome on the world.
Yo, what's up? It's Dave. Welcome to another episode of Unleash the Awesome. Today, let's talk about 7 books that changed my life, and they have the potential to change yours too if you read them and implement what's in there. And there's probably other books, and there's, you probably have your favorite religious text and things like that. I'm not going to get into that today. These are 7 books that are focused on psychology or selling or mindset or skill set or tool set and things like that. And as I thought back, these were milestones in my personal growth and development, and the things that I learned in them came at me at just the right time in my life, in my progression, as I was trying to do whatever it is I was trying to do in my life. So you might want to check them out, but also know with caveat that, these hit me at the right time, and maybe you won't appreciate or fully understand the impact on some of these things if you aren't trying to do similar things like I did. So with that disclaimer in place, let's get into the 7 books that changed my life. And I'm going to list them in order of how I came across them. So the first one is How to Win Friends and Influence People by Dale Carnegie. By the way, everything I talk about, I'll put the links in the show notes. So go check the show notes. I'll have links for you. If any of these authors have other resources or podcasts or something, I'll let you know that too. So the first one is How to Win Friends and Influence People by Dale Carnegie, or Carnegie, however you want to say it. I actually happened across this one quite accidentally. I had done something in my youth, my teenage years. I want to say I was 14, 15, and I must have done something really bad because I essentially got grounded for life from my parents. I don't remember what it was specifically, but it's like, basically you can't come out of your room until, and this was the novel approach that my dad had, until you read and give me a book report on how to win friends and influence people. And I didn't know at the time, but my dad, as he was growing up through his career, actually took Dale Carnegie courses. And this was obviously one of the foundational books that was part of it. So he gave me this book, How to Win Friends and Influence People, said, read this and give me a book report on it, and then we'll consider whether or not you can ever come out of your room again. So I was kind of forced to read that one. And I did it begrudgingly, but I did it. And I learned a lot of stuff, like the sweetest sound to someone is the sound of their own voice. And at the time, I don't think Dale Carnegie knew this, but as we look back on it, and with all the science and stuff that we have, and hindsight being 2020, there's lots of psychology and stuff behind why that is so effective. So there's really simple, tactical, and practical things in there that can help you better deal with people. And there's one pretty much constant in things we're doing in life. There's always people involved. And so if you can't figure out how to win friends and influence people, you're going to be in a really tough spot. So that's a good book that you might want to check out. The second one is called The Magic of Thinking Big. The Magic of Thinking Big by David Schwartz. This one was put into my hands. I was involved in a direct selling organization. This was in the early 1990s, I guess. And, it was all about your dream machine is broken. Basically, you're taught to think small, you're programmed to think small, but you're born for bigger things. You're born for more. Go read this book, The Magic of Thinking Big. And it was just a way to kind of break out of that limited mindset and think about I could have more and do more and be more. And all of this stuff is possible for me if I follow some of the principles and things in this book. And I think a book like this, or this doesn't count in a list of 7, so don't send me emails after this and say, Dave, you can't count. You mentioned more than 7 books. But if you want some updated versions of something around this, Peter Diamandis wrote a book called Abundance. I think Stephen Kotler is a co-author on that. It's called Abundance, and it's a similar mindset. It's this idea of we think small and we think linearly, but what if you could think exponentially? And what if you set goals exponentially? Right? If you think about SMART goals, right, which I think SMART goals are actually dumb. People set SMART goals and they're like, okay, have a measurable 3% increase over sales from last year. That's thinking really small. And that's what they teach you in SMART goals and things like that. And that's not thinking big. But what if you said something like, I'm going to double this, or I'm going to triple this. Or we have people in our world right now, like Elon Musk is like, we're going to go to Mars. I mean, that's pretty audacious. That's thinking big. And day by day, he's getting closer and closer to making that a reality in his lifetime, which is kind of insane if you think about it. Our space program had been essentially dormant for years. We were paying, at least here in the US, we were paying the Russians for a taxi service to get our folks up to the International Space Station. And Elon Musk comes along with SpaceX and creates this thing, and now he's got all these contracts and is flying people up to the International Space Station. He's testing a rocket right now to go to Mars. Like, that's thinking big. That's big stuff. So love him or hate him or, think he's a quirky dude, he definitely thinks big. And he goes after those big ideas, those big concepts. So Magic of Thinking Big was the second one. Then right after this, the book Influence, the Psychology of Persuasion was put into my hands. And if you have not listened to the episode where I did an interview with Dr. Robert Cialdini, the guy that wrote this book, he literally wrote the book on influence, you need to go listen to it. I will make sure I put it in the show notes. It is incredible because in his book, Influence, the Psychology of Persuasion, he used to talk about 6 levers of influence. And the things I like about this is they come at it from a science perspective. So they did a lot of studies and replicated some of those studies. And a lot of the data comes from peer-reviewed journals and things like that. But also there's some real-world studies and some real-world implications. But he used to talk about how there's 6 levers or ideas of influence. And then in this latest book, it's a new one, expanded version, I think is what it's called, that just came out this year, 2021. There's a 7th principle that got added to it because through their study and through looking at things, they realized there's something they needed to add. So I'll see if I can list all 6 of them. Every time I try to do this from memory, I tend to miss one, but I'm cheating right now. I have a copy of the book and I'm looking at it. So it's reciprocity, commitment, and consistency. That's one thing, commitment, consistency, social proof, liking, authority, scarcity, and he just added unity. So if you think about some of these things, all of them have some role in the sales process. So if you've ever seen a successful sales page online or you've gone through a sales process with somebody, they're doing some of these things. The reciprocity, the social proof, scarcity is a big one. You see countdown timers or limited time offers or limited number offers, which is actually more powerful. And Dr. Robert Cialdini talked about that in our conversation. But that was a book, and this is one of the books, like out of these 7, this is one that if I could only give you one book, I would tell you to read this one. Because being able to influence people is something we all need to figure out how to do. Whether you're trying to influence your kids to eat more vegetables or influence your family that the vacation that you want to take is a better one, or influence people in the sales process, or whatever it is you're trying to do, you're always trying to sell something. It may not be a tangible product, but you're always trying to sell ideas and concepts to people all around you. So this is one of those books. If I could only have one out of this list, I would tell people to read this, Influence, the Psychology of Persuasion. Okay, the next one hit me at just the right time. It's called The 4-Hour Workweek by Tim Ferriss. And I read it right when it came out in 2007. That's not to say I didn't read other books in between Influence and this one, but this one jumped out at me because I was in a spot in my career where I was like, is this really what I want to do for my whole life? I was doing pharmaceutical sales and I was doing pretty well, but I was trying to forecast forward and I'm like, I don't want to do this. I don't want to be one of those people when you read my obituary, it says, Dave Gambrill was a lifelong employee of blank company. Like, I didn't want to be that person. And I did an exercise with somebody at the time that talked about writing your own obituary from the future, right? So you write your own obituary. What do you want it to say? And then live into that. So I'd just gone through that exercise with my coach and I was like, okay, I don't want to, work in this corporate environment forever. It's not for me. Yes, it's providing for my family and it's awesome. And I met some great people and, made a fair amount of money with bonuses and I had a company car and all that stuff. But as I was reading Tim Ferriss's book, The 4-Hour Workweek, I realized there is another way. And at the time, his book was focused on teaching you how to essentially build a side hustle and automate or systematize a lot of it so that you could essentially have something running and creating recurring revenue by only working a few hours a week in it. So it's ideal for somebody who's working a full-time job and you're like, okay, can I build something over here on the side that just starts throwing off some revenue for me, some income for me? And so I was reading that. I was like, you know what? I need to start working on this. So I've been doing stuff online for a while and I've been dabbling in some stuff, but this is where I really started to double down and say, okay, I have to figure out how to do this. And so I started following the things he mentions in his book. Now, I have an original copy of the book. After it came out, it was a new and an updated version came out and they added some new stuff to it, but they also eliminated some stuff from it that was really good, actually. So if you could get your hands on an original version, that's the best version. But if you can't, it's still like on the bestseller list. You could still get it on Amazon. You should read it and check it out because it will flip the script on the mindset of a deferred lifestyle. Like Tim essentially came up with the idea or the concept or invented the idea of lifestyle design. So everybody was just told, go to school, get a degree, get a job, work there forever, retire when you're 65, and hopefully you're healthy enough to go have fun with your life. And it takes that whole thing and flips it on its head and says, look, you could do all that now. Like, who says you have to be in an office from 9 to 5? And obviously over the last year, we've discovered that, yeah, almost everybody who has a white collar job can work remotely. But that concept was foreign at the time. And then what Tim teaches you is, can you set up things and can you hiring a VA in India or the Philippines, a virtual assistant, by the way. And I actually have a service that I use for virtual assistants. It's called, they're in the Philippines. I'll put the link in the profile in the show notes for you. But I learned this kind of stuff from Tim, and I actually did something I've never owned up to this in a public broadcast before, but I'll tell you, one of the things he was teaching was, could you hire a VA and could you give them a task? And then, essentially, I live in the United States. Could you give it to somebody who lives in India or the Philippines with the idea of you give them instructions at the end of your workday? You go home, spend time with your family, go to bed, wake up in the morning, and they were working on your behalf while you were sleeping. And then you wake up and you have results in your inbox. So there was some number crunching I had to do for my job at the time. And I was like, okay, let me anonymize some of this. So I took out one of the columns so it didn't have identifying data. And I sent it to this virtual assistant. And I said, look, here's what I need you to do. I want you to crunch this data and put it in some nice graphs and whatever, and get some slides prepared for a PowerPoint presentation. And I would love it, as soon as you can. This is priority number one. So I sent them all the stuff. It was like, 3 and 4 tabs of the spreadsheet. And I'm not super good with that stuff anyway. It would have taken me probably 4 or 5 hours to do it, honestly, if I sat down to do it the way they delivered it to me. I sent the email, whatever, went home, cooked, cook out for the family, right? Did some steaks on the grill or whatever, went to bed, woke up, forgot I actually did this, logged into my email, and the results were there. And I was like, okay, how is this going to be? Like, this can't be great. And I had looked at it, and I was like, this is awesome. So I took that information and then just tweaked it a little bit, put that column back in there that needed to go in there, put some other stuff in there, prettied it up for a presentation, and then sent it on to my boss. And she was like, this is freaking awesome. I was like, thanks. So I had learned that is one of the things you can do. You can hire people to do some things that maybe you're not good at. And now we have things like Fiverr and Upwork in this OnlineJobs.ph, where you can hire virtual assistants in the Philippines. All of these things, I think Freelancer is still around, Funnel Rolodex. There's all these places, right? There's this idea now of who, not how. So instead of worrying about how to do something, you can hire people at pretty reasonable rates pretty much anywhere to do these little contract tasks for you. I'm not going to say all of that was a result of Tim's book, The 4-Hour Workweek, but he talked about a lot of that stuff in the book, and none of that was really happening at the time. It was happening a little bit, but it was rare. Now a lot of that stuff has become commonplace. So if you want some help with that, 4-Hour Workweek's a good book to read that just gets you in the mindset of like doing the 9 to 5 for 40 years. It's not a path that you have to take. I know it's been sold to you, but that's not the only way. And now, since then, with cryptocurrencies and all these other things, you have seen there are other ways. You see, pretty much everybody has a side hustle, or they're doing some direct sales or MLM thing. Like, everybody is trying to do something on the side. And the reason is they're either not fulfilled or they're not making the money they want in their current reality, their current job. And so you don't have to be stuck there. There's options. Okay. The next book that I read shortly after that, and I think it's because Tim Ferriss introduced me to this guy, and Tim started a podcast too recently. Well, not recently, but It wasn't in 2007. I forget when he started it, but I'll put the link to that in the show notes as well. I listened to every episode he's put out of that. There's this guy, Ramit Sethi, and he wrote a book, I Will Teach You to Be Rich. I Will Teach You to Be Rich by Ramit Sethi. And a lot of the stuff in there was stuff I'd heard before about automating your savings, like have stuff come out of your paycheck and go right to your retirement savings and put it in funds. At the time, I guess when it came out, I think we did have mutual funds that matched the S&P 500 and things like that. So it was very, some of it was very basic, and some of it was like how to negotiate a raise and things like that. And he talked about some of these things about how to negotiate a raise based on what I just taught you from hiring that VA and kind of passing it off as my own work at work, which I never really said that. I just said, okay, here it is. And nobody ever asked me, did you get help on this or did you do this? I'm just like, here you go. But when you do stuff like that and you have other assets that you can use, then you provide really good work at your 9 to 5 and you say, hey, I think I deserve a raise. So in that book, he teaches you how to negotiate, teaches you how to save for retirement, things like that. But the thing that kind of jumped out at me in that book and I started doing was his budgeting that he talks about in there is a little bit different than most people will teach you. It was basically like set up a bunch of savings accounts in an online account and have an account for each thing that you're saving towards or want to work towards. So maybe you have one for like having a big wedding, buying a house payment or whatever, vacation fund, things like that. And he would recommend having those set up and then have automated amounts of money, small or big, didn't really matter, but just get in the habit of that stuff automatically coming out of your paycheck, or as soon as your paycheck got direct deposited, like it's automatically coming out. And obviously also investing in the things, your retirement, your savings, your emergency fund, all of those things, right? So if you're ever investment professional, don't be sending me emails saying, well, that's irresponsible. And again, by the way, this is not investment advice. This is for information and educational purposes only. But one of the things he's talked about was setting up these accounts and then, having the money automatically go in there. And so I started doing that, and it was amazing because even after, having kids and, having to figure out how to get cars for my kids as they grew up, we had a car account. And I actually had a company car for a long time. So what I was doing is I was just putting money into that account that would be what a general car payment would look like. So over years, there was like thousands of dollars in there. So then I could either use it for repairs on our other cars, or I could use it as a down payment on a car or whatever, or pay cash outright for a car. It got so big at one point. But there's something else in it. And I don't know if I learned this directly from his book, but it's something I started doing, and it's a neat idea. So I'm going to give you this little financial tidbit. Again, do with it what you will, do your own homework research, due diligence, blah, blah, blah. But I started an account for our insurance deductibles. And so what it allowed me to do was increase the deductibles, which decreases my insurance payment. What do I mean by that? Quick example. Let's say I had 3 insurance accounts I was worried about, 2 cars and a house. And on each car, I had a $500 deductible. And on the house, or the home insurance, I had a $1,000 deductible. I would work on saving in this insurance deductible account, savings account, $2,000, right? $500 for each car and $1,000 for the home insurance. So now I have my deductibles covered. So then what I would do is I'd save a little bit more in there. And as it got up a little bit, right, past the amount that would cover the deductibles, I would call the insurance company, and maybe just one at a time. Let's say I got another $500 in that account, $2,500, okay? I would call the insurance company on one of the cars and say, can we please raise the deductible $500? What would that do to the payment for the insurance? Think about this. I was getting ready to have 3 boys all driving and on my insurance at the same time. Okay, so that was going to get expensive. So I knew looking into the future, what could I do to mitigate that expense? And so at the time, back around 2008 or so, I started doing this. And at the time, all my kids were born, but they were small, toddlers, elementary school. But I was like, if I keep saving money in this insurance deductible thing, I can basically self-insure myself against my deductible. And so I just kept doing that. And so I would just keep calling the insurance company and go, hey, can you raise my deductible on my home insurance? Can you? And it got to the point where I couldn't raise the deductible anymore because the insurance company's like, yeah, I don't know if it was a law thing or a company policy, but they're like, no, you can't raise it any more than that. So I have an account for all of our insurance thing, not just the example I gave you, but that for all of that, our health insurance and things like that, so that if something were to happen, then it just comes out of the account and it's not really a big deal. Okay. That is one of the things, or the ideas or the concept, or it gave me the idea, the spark to do that came from the book I Will Teach You to Be Rich by Ramit Sethi. Okay. Two more books. And these are more recent. The next one is called Trust Me, I'm Lying by Ryan Holiday. And I considered not putting this one on the list, but it did actually change my life. So I wanted to put it on there and make sure you could get access to this. Trust Me, I'm Lying by Ryan Holiday. You probably know Ryan Holiday. He writes a lot of stuff about Stoicism and Seneca and all that stuff. And he's got some other books that are really awesome, Perennial Seller. But this one, the book is actually called Perennial Seller, and it's a perennial seller. But this one, Trust Me, I'm Lying, is focused on how, when blogs started becoming popular, how news organizations were manipulating the sources or not quite having the journalistic standards that they may have had in the past. And maybe this is kind of where the term fake news came about. But what was happening is anybody with a computer could publish a quote story online, and then a reputable organization would in their publication say a source or this source, right? So let's just say, by way of example, because it's easy, I'm not sure the New York Times would do this, but let's say USA Today. USA Today then quotes this blog that just some guy didn't do any homework. He just put an idea or concept or made something up. USA Today then uses it as a source, and then another organization that has a history of more journalistic standards. Look, let's not get into what you think about these organizations. We'll talk about that some other time. But somebody like the New York Times then says, well, according to the USA Today. So they just amplified this blog that may or may not have done its homework, may or may not be true. But it just goes through this whole process of how all that stuff is done. And then there's all these other platforms and programs and things where people are putting out so much information, and that's bubbling up because people aren't doing their homework. It's bubbling up to major news organizations, and then they're sharing it as fact, or that this actually has a story to it because it's being talked about online, but a lot of that stuff is being manufactured. So there's two things here. One, you should read the book, Trust Me, I'm Lying, so you can be aware of what's going on. So then when you see information and you see news, you could go like, okay, I'm going to dig into that one a little bit, or I'm not going to give that any validity based on what I know, because they haven't given direct sources, right? An anonymous source or a famous blog or whatever. Okay, that's probably not so good. So it will help you do your own due diligence on information that is fed to you. However, it will also, if you're creating a business or you want to get some publicity for your stuff out there, it will show you how to do it in a way that you understand how all this stuff is getting shared to the world. So if you could get your information in front of one of these blogs, one of these influencers, now with Instagram and everything else, if you can get some of these people talking about your things or sharing your things, then it's likely that it could get picked up. And there's actually a service, I don't know if I've ever mentioned it on the podcast. It's called HARO, Help a Reporter Out. HARO, Help a Reporter Out, HARO. That has emails that go out every day, and people are looking for sources for their stories, for their blogs, for their TV shows even. And what you could do is, knowing that these people are looking for sources, you could start feeding the information, the marketing stuff about your company to these people. And then some of these bloggers and stuff are writing and getting their stuff syndicated, which means it gets broadcast out through multiple channels. Maybe it ends up on the AP Wire, Reuters, stuff like that. And then your information about your company or whatever is out there, right? So there's a way to, for lack of a better term, game this process for your business or your benefit as well. So Trust Me, I'm Lying is something you should definitely read. And then the last one is Expert Secrets by Russell Brunson. And he's got a whole bunch of books in the Expert series, Traffic Secrets and Dotcom Secrets. But Expert Secrets was the one that was put into my hands right when it came out. So I don't know, 7 years ago, something like that. And it was all about how to essentially monetize your message online, get it out there, how to become the attractive character. And he talks about a lot of this stuff. This is why I fell in love with it. He talks about a lot of the stuff from Dr. Cialdini's book, Influence, and some other things. So I understood as I was reading it, because I had become a student of sales and psychology, and I had a sales job for a number of years in a number of organizations in pharmaceutical sales and sports and entertainment. And I'm familiar with multi-million-dollar deals, right? So I have a background there. And also from doing my own study and getting world-class training at some of these organizations. as I was reading Expert Secrets, I was like, wow, this Russell guy, who I did not know at the time, I'm like, this Russell guy really knows his stuff, because he kept quoting and using some of these other sources. I'm like, this guy's really well read and has done his homework. And so as I was reading this, I'm like, okay. And he was showing us how to position the stuff online. Well, he also has created as co-founder of a software called Clickfunnels, and he's doing really well for himself these days. And I've become friends with him. I've had him on this podcast. He's been on at least 3 times. Twice. I had him on twice. So you can go listen to those episodes. We were talking about when his book Traffic Secrets came out. And so one of the episodes was me interviewing him about that. And then one of the episodes is about Instagram. And it was just a snippet from his audiobook version of Traffic Secrets. But Expert Secrets is one of those things where if you want to become a personal brand, you want to become a speaker, a trainer, a coach, consultant, or maybe you already are, but you want to be better at monetizing that message online and doing it in a way that will create recurring revenue for you, so you essentially can make money in your sleep. I know that sounds like hyperbole, but once you do the work and set it up, that's really what happens. Like, I've set up a lot of the things he teaches in that book, and it's not unusual for me to go to sleep and then wake up in the morning and look at my PayPal or my Stripe or whatever accounts and have more money, sometimes significantly more money in there than I had when I went to bed, because people are buying my offers. They're buying my courses. They're buying my coaching. They're buying whatever. I have some of these evergreen offers out there. I learned a lot of that stuff from reading Expert Secrets. Okay. So, by the way, I'll put a link in the show notes for that, but it's Gambrill.com/expert secrets. You can go buy the book from Amazon, but if you get it directly through Russell, through that affiliate link, Gambrill.com/expert secrets, he has a whole bunch of bonuses that you want to get. So make sure you grab it from him directly so you can get a bunch of bonus courses and stuff that he has. So those are the 7 books that have changed my life. Again, to review: How to Win Friends and Influence People by Dale Carnegie, The Magic of Thinking Big by David Schwartz, Influence, The Psychology of Persuasion by Dr. Robert Cialdini, The 4-Hour Workweek by Tim Ferriss, I Will Teach You to Be Rich by Ramit Sethi, Trust Me, I'm Lying by Ryan Holiday, and Expert Secrets from Russell Brunson. So if I were you, if one of those piqued your interest, go grab it, or maybe get it on Audible. If you've never tried Audible before, I'll put a link in the show notes where you can get, I think, 1, maybe 2 free audiobooks for free. Yes, free audiobooks for free. You can get a trial with some free books. Let's put it that way. I don't know how many it is, but you can listen to them. Like, I listen to audiobooks all the time, in the shower, in the car, at the grocery store, whatever. Put the app on your phone, you can listen to it. But these are books that if you've never had any other advice on things you should read, then start here, read some of them. If you like them, then be like, all right, I guess Dave knows what he's talking about, and you can read some of the other ones. Or if you don't, I don't know, go find another list of somebody you know, like, and trust, and read their books that they recommend, right? But at some point, these books, this information, reading it and implementing it will help shortcut success for you, right? There's really no life hack or shortcut to success, except for that you can cut down on the trial and error, right? So if you read these books and you implement what they're talking about, it will cut down significantly on your own trial and error that you have to go through to get the success. And if you just follow the roadmap, right? Brendon Burchard said to me one time, the best time to look at the map is before you go into the woods. And these books are maps. They're maps on how to deal with people. They're maps on how to build a business online. They're maps on how to create a recurring revenue stream outside of your normal job. Tim Ferriss's book, right? These are all maps that you should look at before you go running into the woods of building a side hustle, building your own business, monetizing your message online, dealing with people, trying to sell things to people. I'll tell you, if you can't figure out how to influence people, you're going to have a really hard time selling your services, right? So these books will serve as a great jumping off point for you. Learn all these things, get a good foundation, and then you can go read other books or do a deeper dive on stuff if there's interest there for you, okay? So go read all these books, or at least one of them, implement it, and I think you will find that it will help you unleash your awesome on the world. See ya.
Thanks for listening to Unleash the Awesome. Please be sure to subscribe, rate, and review wherever you listen to your podcasts. And please share us on your favorite social media platforms using #UnleashAwesome.